On Christmas Eve, my son arrived at my parents' house with a bag of gifts. My mom answered the door and said, "We're keeping it small this year, just real family," before shutting it. He walked home by himself. I didn't yell. I simply made a few decisions. Within hours, my dad was calling nonstop. Christmas Eve. The night my own mother slammed the door in my 14-year-old son's face, she unknowingly ignited a fire. Not just in me, but in our entire family, setting off a chain reaction that burned everything down, and finally, built something real. I was not supposed to be working Christmas Eve. A newer nurse, fresh-faced and eager, had practically begged for the day off to surprise her dad. And I, being the nice one, said yes without really thinking. My brain, probably already on autopilot from the endless shifts, figured I'd be home by 8 p.m., plenty of time for our cherished traditions. You know, the matching pajamas, the steaming mugs of hot cocoa, the ridiculous holiday movie we'd watch and lovingly roast every single year, like it was the first time we'd seen it. But what I didn't know, as I stood there elbow-deep in patient charts, trying to reason with a combative old man convinced the nurses were stealing his slippers, was the quiet, heartbreaking drama unfolding miles away. My 14-year-old son, my incredible son, was getting dressed in his absolute best clothes, slipping every penny of his hard-earned savings into his jacket pocket, and embarking on a 3-mile walk through the freezing cold, a bag of carefully wrapped presents clutched in his hand. He'd planned it for weeks, meticulously. He even checked the bus schedule, he told me later, but Christmas Eve wasn't a bus day. So, he walked. For almost an hour, battling the biting wind, he pressed on. And when he finally reached their door, his fingers numb but his heart full of hopeful expectation, he knocked. These weren't just any gifts. He hadn't just grabbed cheap filler. He'd listened. He'd paid attention. He found my mom the exact brand of lavender candle she always used to light in her kitchen, a scent I hadn't smelled in years. For my dad, a vintage-style fishing hat from that outdoor store he loved but always deemed too expensive for himself. And for my sister, a quirky enamel pin shaped like a tomato can. It was this obscure, adorable inside joke from when she used to babysit him. He truly believed these details, this thoughtfulness, would matter. He knocked. The door opened. My mom stood there. Her eyes scanned him, then the bag, and then back to his face. Her words were a cold, sharp knife, "We're keeping it small this year. Only real family." And then, without another glance, she shut the door. He just stood there. For a whole minute. I can only imagine the thoughts swirling in his head. Surely, it was a mistake. Maybe she'd come back out. Maybe it was a joke? But the door remained shut. No porch light flickered on in concern. No one called out. No one checked. He was left alone, in the cold, with a heart utterly shattered. He walked home. Alone. He didn't call me. Didn't text. Just walked, carrying that burden. I finally stumbled through our front door around 8:30 p.m., completely wiped out, ready to just crash. But then I saw him. Curled up on the couch, still in his jacket, like he'd been frozen in time the moment he walked in. The bag of beautiful, hand-picked gifts sat accusingly by the door, still full. He hadn't even made it to his room. At first, he wouldn't tell me. "Everything's fine, Mom," he mumbled, eyes red-rimmed, refusing to touch the takeout dinner I'd brought home. But then I saw it, a tiny label peeking out from one of the unwrapped presents, a telltale sign of the disappointment he was trying so hard to hide. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. No drama, no tears, just facts. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry either. I just listened. And as his quiet words painted the picture of that cruel rejection, something inside me didn't just shift, it shattered and then reformed. Years of swallowed words, of overlooked slights, of being treated like a perpetual inconvenience, a mistake they had to deal with, it all slammed into place. Every single pin in my mental domino line stood perfectly aligned, waiting for the push. And that night, I pushed. I made a few quiet changes. Nothing dramatic, no shouted threats, just cold, hard decisions. By midnight, my dad's name was blowing up my phone, ringing relentlessly, like our house was on fire. I ignored every single call. Not that night. Not the next morning. I knew exactly what those frantic missed calls were about. I wasn't in the mood for excuses wrapped in paper-thin, fake concern. Instead, I let my son sleep in. I made him pancakes, exactly the way he loves them, way too many chocolate chips, no syrup. We didn't talk much over breakfast, but there was this new, quiet understanding between us. A solid connection forged in shared pain. He wasn't going to bring it up again unless I did. So, I did. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and asked, "Do you want to go back there? Do you want to understand?" He shrugged, a long second of silence passing between us. He said he didn't care, but I knew he did. He desperately wanted to understand why. Why they could look at him, this sweet, thoughtful boy, and decide he wasn't enough. Why they'd open their door to a child bearing gifts, and then close it as if he were nothing more than a stranger selling coupons. My heart ached for him, but my resolve hardened. "Grab your jacket," I said. I carefully packed the presents back into the bag. And we drove over. By the way, if you're still with me on this unbelievable journey, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the wild ride of what happened next, and all the other stories I have to share. They definitely weren't expecting us. My mom yanked the door open, still in her robe, a tight, saccharine smile plastered on her face, the kind she reserves for nosy neighbors when she's secretly seething. My dad hovered behind her, already looking annoyed, like our unexpected presence was a personal affront designed to ruin their day. I didn't wait for them to speak. I simply walked past them, straight into their living room, and sat down. My son, a silent shadow, followed. There was no yelling. No histrionics. I think that's what truly rattled them. I didn't accuse. I didn't cry. I didn't throw a scene. I just placed the gift bag on the coffee table, calmly, and recounted everything that happened. Word for word. My mom, predictably, immediately launched into a flurry of justifications. I didn't recognize him right away. I thought he was a neighbor kid. We had a long day. It was cold. We didn't think he was alone. My dad, ever the defender, jumped in. We never told him not to come. We just didn't know he would. I just let them talk. Let their flimsy excuses hang in the air. Then, I asked one question. Just one. My voice was steady, unwavering. Would you have shut the door on my sister's kid? Silence. Heavy. Profound. My dad finally broke it, dismissing me. "You're overreacting. It was just a misunderstanding. If you're going to blow it out of proportion, maybe you should just leave." I didn't argue. I didn't even acknowledge his words. Instead, I simply told them, "Check the balance of the shared account." My mom frowned, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. My dad pulled out his phone. I watched his expression morph, a slow dawning horror spreading across his features. The money was gone. Every single dollar I'd contributed over the past few years. Home repairs. Family vacations. Emergency vet bills. My sister's car. All of it. I'd always paid more than my share, consistently, because I truly believed we were family. My dad looked up, his eyes wide, like I'd just physically slapped him across the face. My mom actually looked scared. I stood up. "Son, we're leaving." I walked out without another word. They didn't follow us. But I knew, deep down, they would. And what came next? Oh, they didn't see that coming either. They didn't call the next day, or the day after that. But on the third morning, there it was, a gift basket on our porch, wrapped in cellophane and a gaudy red ribbon, adorned with one of those generic, glitter font tags screaming Happy Holidays. Inside? A log of mystery meat no one would touch, stale crackers, and a wheel of cheese that looked suspiciously warm. No note, no names. Initially, I thought it was a neighbor's mistake. Then another appeared the very next day. This one held a fuzzy throw blanket, a tiny Bluetooth speaker, and a tin of rock-hard cookies you could chip a tooth on. Still no card. Still no message. By the end of the week, our porch looked like we'd looted a gas station gift aisle. 3 baskets, 2 boxes of generic candy, an inspirational wall plaque boldly proclaiming family is forever. A pair of Christmas mugs, one reading Grandma's favorite, the other Grandpa's buddy. My son didn't touch any of it. He barely even looked. They thought they could buy their way back in. They actually believed these cheap, mass-produced trinkets would smooth over the fact they'd left a heartbroken 14-year-old boy standing alone in the brutal cold. They thought shiny paper and sugary treats could erase the devastating message they'd screamed loud and clear, "You're not one of us." It made me sick to my stomach. I didn't say much to my son about the parade of gifts. I could see him trying, so hard, to pretend he didn't care. But I also knew, with a mother's instinct, that a small, vulnerable part of him was clinging to the hope that it meant something. That maybe, just maybe, they'd call. Maybe they'd say sorry. Maybe they'd actually come see him. But they didn't. Not until New Year's Eve morning. My phone buzzed with a text from my dad, coming by around 4 o'clock. "Let's talk." No question mark. No, if that's okay. Just an order, as if he still commanded my attention, as if he still had the right. I didn't text back. I didn't even tell my son. I just quietly, resolutely, made up my mind. They pulled into our driveway exactly at 4 p.m. My dad, in that hideous brown jacket he wears to literally everything, and my mom, in a sequined sweater, as if we were about to throw some grand New Year's party. He clutched a bottle of cheap grocery store wine, she carried a shiny gift bag, brimming with the delusion that this would all end with hugs and happy photos. I opened the door. I let them stand there for a deliberate few seconds, staring at my unyielding face. Then, without a single word, I stepped aside. They strode in like they still owned the place. My mom, ever the superficial, complimented the wreath on the door. My dad, oblivious, asked where everyone else was, expecting a full family gathering, a return to the status quo. No one sat down. I offered them nothing. I just stood there. And I waited. My mom started first, launching into a rehearsed monologue about how they'd had time to reflect, how hard the holidays were for everyone, how maybe feelings had gotten hurt. My dad, ever the master of deflection, jumped in, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that of course they'd loved their grandson, and that it had been blown out of proportion. Then came the truly excruciating part. My mom, with a flourish, handed my son that Grandpa's buddy mug from the gift basket. A peace offering. As if this cheap piece of pottery could somehow mend a broken spirit. And that was it. That was all they had. I looked at both of them, my gaze steady. My voice was calm, but steel. "You had 5 minutes. They're up." They blinked. My dad's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger. "I mean what I said," I continued, every word a hammer blow. "You shut the door on my son, so I am shutting the door on you. He came to you with pure love, with thoughtful gifts, and you turned your back on him. You don't get to waltz in here now and pretend that didn't happen." My mom started to cry, those crocodile tears I'd seen countless times. My dad, in a predictable rage, snarled, "You're being cruel." "Leave," I told them. And they did. Not another word was exchanged on their way out. As he passed, my dad actually slammed that bottle of wine down on my kitchen table, as if that petty act could somehow hurt me. My son stepped out from the hallway. He didn't say anything. He just walked over and hugged me. Long and quiet. That New Year's Eve, we didn't go anywhere. No party, no family countdown, no loud celebrations. Just the two of us, burgers sizzling on the stove, an old comedy playing softly on TV. And the profound, liberating calm that finally comes when you stop pretending. But this wasn't over. Not yet. I still had one last, crucial thing to say. The wine bottle sat there on the kitchen table, untouched, for 2 whole days. Neither of us mentioned it. It became part of the silence, like so many other things we chose not to say out loud. Then, on the second night, while we were taking down the last of the Christmas decorations, my son accidentally knocked it over. It shattered across the tile floor with a sharp crack, like it had been waiting for permission to break. Neither of us flinched. The next afternoon, I asked him if he wanted to keep anything from the growing pile of gifts on the porch, the speaker, the mugs, the tins of cookies. He didn't even look up from his sketchpad, just mumbled, "No," so we took it all out to the backyard. I dragged the old fire pit from the shed, the one we hadn't used since last summer, and carefully stacked every single item inside. Every cheap basket, every sparkly trinket, every desperate gesture wrapped in glitter and plastic. We stood there in the cold, just the two of us, watching it all burn. The fuzzy blanket curled into flames almost instantly. One of the mugs exploded with a loud pop that actually made both of us laugh. It wasn't anger anymore. Not really. It was something else entirely, like cleaning up after a devastating storm that had finally passed. I honestly thought that would be the end of it, that we could finally breathe. But around 2 a.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown number. Straight to voicemail. A few minutes later, another, different number. Then a third. On the fourth call, I picked up. It was my sister. I hadn't spoken to her in over 6 months. She lives a couple of hours away, rarely visits, never calls. She's always been good at staying on the sidelines, perfectly neutral, utterly detached. She started in immediately, a foo. Riotous torrent of words. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she shrieked. "Mom's been crying for days. Dad's barely speaking." Draining that account was spiteful. "You've gone too far." I just let her vent, listening to the shrill anger. Then I asked her one thing. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice deadly calm, "when your nephew stood on their porch, alone, with gifts in his hands?" Silence. A long, stunned silence. Then she said something I never expected. "They're talking about selling the house." I blinked. What? The account. It wasn't just my savings. Dad had been planning to use it to fix up the house, maybe list it that spring. That money was integral to everything. They were panicking. Fighting about what to do now. And just like that, the truth hit me. It wasn't about regret for my son. It wasn't about what they'd done. It was about the money. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine, I told her, my voice clear and unwavering. I gave more than I ever should have. And I never asked for anything in return, except basic human decency. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. You don't get to abandon a child and expect the house you built on that kind of rot to stand. She hung up. 2 mornings later, my mom appeared. Alone. No car in sight, she must have parked around the corner. No makeup, no dramatic coat, just her, standing on my porch like a ghost who'd forgotten her reason for haunting. She didn't knock. Didn't ring the bell. Just stood there, clutching something. I watched her from the window. After maybe a minute, she placed the item on the doorstep and walked away without so much as a backward glance. It was a photo. A printed picture of my son, maybe 6 or 7, sitting on her lap, his arms wrapped around her neck, both of them laughing. One of those perfectly blurry, joyful moments you forget you even captured. Taped to the glass frame was a sticky note. Just 2 words, in her neat, slanted handwriting, I forgot. That was it. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just a confession. But it sat heavier than anything else she could have possibly said. It wasn't about shame. It wasn't even about guilt. It was about the chilling realization that the center of their universe, the part they believed would always orbit them, had irrevocably shifted. And that terrified them more than anything. But honestly, they weren't the ones I was thinking about anymore. Because the real story, the one that truly mattered, was just beginning. New Year's Day arrived, quiet and still. No calls. No texts. Our porch stayed empty. The silence felt unfamiliar, yes, but not unwelcome. It was like walking into a room after everyone has finally left, raw, honest, and filled with a strange, peaceful calm. We made pancakes again, my son adding even more chocolate chips than usual. I let him. We spent the afternoon reorganizing his room. He wanted to take down old posters, start fresh. New year, new walls. I helped him hang a photo he'd taken himself during a hiking trip we'd gone on that fall. It wasn't perfect, a little crooked, some glare, but he loved it. He said it felt real. Around sunset, as we were finishing up, my phone buzzed with a message from my dad. We're outside. Please come out. We need to talk. I looked at my son. He looked back at me. Do you want to stay inside? I asked. Or come? He didn't hesitate. I'm not hiding. So, we walked out together. They were both there, standing near their car. My mom looked pale, drawn. My dad had that stiff posture, the one he always adopts when he's about to pretend he's in control. They each held something. I already knew what it was. Gifts. 2 brand new bags, shiny paper, an excessive amount of tape. One with my son's name. One with mine. I didn't touch them. My dad started, just like always. A torrent of carefully chosen words. They'd made mistakes. They'd been caught up in their own stress. The holidays bring out the worst sometimes. They'd been raised differently, not used to showing emotion. A lot of words. Empty words. Then my mom stepped forward, her voice edged with desperation. They wanted to make things right. They missed their grandson. They didn't want things to end like this. And then came the inevitable plea, would you consider having dinner? Just the 4 of us? A fresh start? I let them speak. I didn't interrupt. I just let them lay it all out. Then I asked them to look at the door behind me. My voice was low, but every word resonated with a weight I'd carried for years. Remember Christmas Eve? I asked. Remember how cold it was? Remember what you said to him when he came to your door, holding gifts? Their faces were blank, stunned. You didn't just reject a visit, I continued, my voice gaining strength. You rejected a person. A kid who wanted to love you. Now you're here with bags and apologies, expecting what? A do-over? They didn't answer. There was no answer they could give. This door, I told them plainly, definitively, it's not open anymore. You taught my son that family has limits. That love in your house is conditional. So now, I'm teaching him the opposite. That he doesn't have to accept disrespect, just because someone shares his blood. They stood there, dumbfounded, like they literally couldn't comprehend what I was saying. My dad, bewildered, stammered, so, you're really doing this? I simply nodded. My mom tried to thrust her gift bag into my hands. I didn't move. My son, with a quiet strength that made my heart swell, turned and walked back inside. I followed him. They didn't knock again. We watched from the window as they stood there a little longer, then finally, defeated, they put the bags down and drove off. I waited until their car was completely out of sight. Then, I walked out, picked up both bags, and without a second thought, dropped them straight into the trash bin. It wasn't dramatic. It was just necessary. My son didn't ask what was inside. He never will. And just like that, the last door closed. But inside our home, something else entirely opened. Something stronger. Something real. We didn't talk about it much after that, not because we were avoiding it, but because we didn't need to. There was simply nothing left to explain. The days that followed felt different, lighter, as if the very air in our home had been cleansed. I hadn't realized how much space they had occupied in my life, even when they weren't physically around, that insidious, constant weight that makes you tired without ever truly knowing why. It was gone now. One afternoon, I saw the photo my mom had left, sitting on my son's dresser. "Do you want to keep it?" I asked him. He looked at it for a few seconds, then quietly said, "Not really." I nodded, took it without a word. We didn't need reminders of the past. We were too busy making new ones. We never heard from them again. No more calls. No more desperate, discarded baskets. My sister sent a few vague texts about keeping the peace, but I didn't respond. True peace doesn't live where people pretend nothing happened. Then, on January 6th, my son surprised me. He'd used some of H's leftover Christmas money, the money he didn't spend on gifts that ended up in a bonfire, to book us a weekend away. Just a cheap little cabin a few towns over, nothing fancy. He showed me the receipt, like it was nothing. "I thought it'd be cool," he said, a tentative smile on his face, "if we started our own thing." So, we packed snacks and books, loaded the car, and just went. It snowed the second night. We stayed up late, playing cards by the fireplace, sipping instant cocoa, and talking about the silliest, weirdest dreams we'd ever had. At one point, he looked around the cozy little room, a profound contentment in his eyes, and simply said, "I like this. Just us." It hit me harder than I expected. Not because it was new, but because of how profoundly right it felt. There was no tension, no awkward silences, no waiting for someone to say the wrong thing. No tight smiles, no fake laughter. Just calm. Just truth. Just us. He's growing so fast now, taller than me, his voice deeper. He still tries to act like certain things don't bother him, but I know better. I also know he watches how I navigate the world, how I respond to disrespect, to forgiveness, to love. And that, in the end, is what this whole seismic shift became about. Not revenge. Not money. Not even about proving a point. It was about showing him, irrevocably, where the line is, and what to do when someone dares to cross it. We came home from that cabin refreshed, renewed. We didn't bring back souvenirs. We didn't need to. What we built there, the quiet strength and unbreakable bond, came home with us. And this year, we'll build more. More traditions that belong solely to us. No shame. No guilt. No waiting on people who left us standing in the cold. Because in the end, they were the ones who closed the door first. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. What would you have done in my place? Or have you ever had to draw a hard line with family members like this? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.